Hockberger is an associate professor of neuroscience of the Northwest University in Chicago, United States, and higher education consultant. Since 1988, he has held numerous leadership roles at Northwest University since joining the faculty. Currently, Philip split his time between academic and consulting service. His academic activities continue to be focused on promoting career advancement of scientific working in core facilities. He is co-chair of Global Bioimaging, a member of the Executive Board of Bioimaging North America, and a member of FACEIP Task Force on Shared Research Resources. Philip consulting services are offered through Waymaker Group, where he leads the group higher education practice. And he is going to present the seminar, Building a Sustainable Portfolio of Core Facilities. Please welcome.
Thank you. All right, first order of business is, can you hear me, or do I need to move the mic up? You can. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's lunchtime, so I'm going to start out with a video because we were talking about videos in the previous sessions. So here's a 4-minute video that I created. We did it ourselves at minimal cost back in 2016, and in the first years it had 1,000 hits.
Or facilities are anything from microscopes to NMRs to computer facilities. You know, and those core facilities operate in a similar way to what the libraries operated in when they were originally built. As an investigator, you need to access more pieces of equipment that are no longer in your laboratory. Core facilities not only provide an ecosystem for those on campus, but it also provides an ecosystem that draws people to the campus.
And the core facilities run the gamut from the engineering school to the arts and sciences and the medical school. The cost-effective way of getting the expertise, the expensive equipment into our laboratories in a way that we can afford.
Really, the key to a great core facility are the great people who run that core facility.
We put great pride in the people who run our facilities are faculty who specialize in the instrumentation and capabilities of their core facilities. So when a faculty member comes or one of their students comes to a core facility, they know they're talking to an expert in that area.
So we have 8 full-time staff, over 150 years of experience on those 3 techniques. And these people dedicate their lives to each of the individual techniques.
Core facility career is almost like being a Renaissance man. You have to adapt to different realities.
It feels like we're here, we have a big family.
They're focused on individual pieces of equipment, but they get to interact and watch the students grow over time, and they get to work on such a wide variety of projects. It makes it a lot of fun.
You have to be interested in more than just the answer, but how the answer is obtained.
I think I like that aspect a lot, of being involved in projects other than the ones that just interest me.
We have world-class scientists here.
Nowadays, real careers are made on specialization and expertise, focused expertise. And if you do it well, I think you get a lot of the benefits career-wise.
We get to help lots of different people figure out research questions.
You have to understand what their needs are for users, and also communicate back what you can do for them.
Our facility serves biology departments and chemistry departments and material science departments, and so I get to work with all of these different interesting biomaterials and nanoparticles and chemical products that I never would have worked with as a cell biologist.
So new users come in, and because we're in a research university, they're doing things that no one's researched before.
So in any given year, we'll have about 400 researchers use equipment.
I love working in the core facility. I get to work with a much wider variety of samples than I ever would have in a single research project.
Really, it's the people, the equipment, and the space that the institution understands they need to invest every year. The typical investment per year in core facilities is $6 million.
We made extremely good use of very generous institutional funds, which are very competitive, but available for core facilities to upgrade and get new instruments.
At Northwestern, we created a business course with our business school, Kellogg School of Management, specifically designed to train and educate the leaders of core facilities, both at the business level and at the science level.
A core facility is a business, marketing, project management, accountability, and support.
I think that the opportunities that are given here at Northwestern go beyond, in some respects, many other places.
It's very good pleasure to work with all of these scientists to help them develop their programs. So it's really a privilege to work here.
Okay. All right. Well, that was just a brief introduction. I had heard some of the critique of the previous videos, and we created this on our own for a total cost of $5,000 back in 2016, and most of that cost was hiring a videographer. Today we would use an iPhone, and it probably cost us $1,000 to create it. Now, just to finish that thought, we put a little bit of thought into what's the message, how are we going to frame it, who's going to do the editing. The editor helped a little bit, but mostly my staff member did all of it. And she won an award for the whole university on competitions on best videos. So that came out of core facilities, doing it on our own in 2016. All right, what I'm going to do today is use Northwestern as a case study. I travel all around the world, and my target audience are usually provost vice presidents, associate vice presidents, and associate deans for research. I am there to show them how they can do core facilities in a way that brings value to the institution, keeps their budget in check. All of that is what I'm about to share with you. But here we have 4 topics we're covering in global bioimaging, and I'm going to cover 3 of them. I'm not doing data science, that's tomorrow. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about management, how we manage them, how they operate. Tomorrow I'll talk about career development in another talk. You'll see our KPIs and SEIs, what those look like and how important those are. And we've now been doing this for 14 years. Let me walk you through. The first couple of slides are the value proposition. Many of your cores operate differently. Ours are specialized laboratories with, of course, unique expense, equipment and people. But number 2 there, ours are fee for service. So that's the new model. As a professor, I ran my own research lab for 22 years, and I generated facilities all through grants. And some of you still have that mechanism. That was the traditional way in which we got the advanced technologies into people's labs, but it was done with collaborations with me. I never ran a fee-for-service laboratory, and when I first heard about fee-for-service laboratories, I was floored. I thought, what a great idea, but now how do you get the faculty to buy into it? And that was my challenge in 2009 when I accepted the position of director of cores. As my first administrative role, and then as I succeeded, I kept getting promoted through that route. So cores have challenges, and our model is fee for service. Notice the UBI, that means unrelated business income. It's a tax, the IRS. If we're going to go out and have external customers, we pay tax on it. We worked that all out, how to do it. And I wrote a paper on it, and that's the one down at the bottom there. Because we're paying with most of our faculty are paying with federal grants, the cores are regulated how we structure our finances. Nevertheless, most are subsidized by the university to keep the costs as low as possible. Now, why do universities invest in cores? This is part of that value proposition as an administrator that I share with other administrators. It fosters interdisciplinary research. It provides in-house expertise in specialized technologies and services. It absolutely facilitates faculty recruitment and retention. facilitates external partnerships, I'll tell you about some of those, and advances the research enterprise. We all win. How does a core actually demonstrate its value? By advancing the research mission of the institution. We talked a little bit about that this morning. Every institution and usually each school has a strategic plan. Read it. As a faculty member, I mentioned this one, I never even knew we had one. I didn't care. I focused on my own research. And that's still true of the faculty. But a core facility, you need to be thinking institutionally. Read your strategic plan and align your mission with it. For the users, it's advancing their research programs, right? What you're providing for them is helping them move the needle on their program in ways that they could not do on their own. And it also advances your discipline. That's why you're here. You're part of an emerging new field, and your cores contribute to that field. So at Northwestern, we are in 2 locations 12 miles apart. I oversee 3 schools, engineering and arts and sciences, which are in Evanston, a northern suburb of Chicago, and the medical school, which is downtown. In the United States, it is very typical for a university, no matter where it's located in the state, to have its medical school in the biggest city. We're no different. These are the types of cores that we have. As you see, physical science and engineering, 11, clinical, that means human-based cores, 8, flow, peptide, you see the numbers here, a total of 44 cores across 3 schools on 2 campuses. Here is a picture of what they look like. And so this is somewhat unique to North.
Welcome everybody to our second play date of the semester. We've already made it through a couple weeks, which is unbelievable. They went by really quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to not spend much time here.
It could be the YouTube's. Yeah, there it is. Good catch. Has that ever happened to you? Yes. All right. So these are the facilities that we have by discipline. Engineering are in the sort of orange, and of course, engineering is a school at Northwestern. Chemistry here is a department. And if you've never heard of Northwestern, then I'll just share with you, Northwestern is known for its chemistry department. Most of you know that University of Chicago is known for economics and physics. We're known for chemistry. We have 2 Nobel laureates, 4 Feynman Award winners, and half the department are members of the National Academy. We have no other department even close to that quality at Northwestern, and they have core facilities. Biomedical, both campuses has, biology and basic science at the medical school, and medicine means clinical core facilities. The C here means Chicago, and the E that's barely visible behind these means Evanston. And notice some of them are in both campuses, and that was part of my desire to have them under a single umbrella so that we do not duplicate cores. Of course, when I started, there was a lot of duplication, and we needed to eliminate it. And I can tell you later about that whole process. What I mostly want to talk about today are what I call innovations in administration. These are the things we did, or that my team did. My team means the first 4 years, me. It was just me. And then I hired 2 people, an administrator and a finance person. And then we became a team of 3. And most of what I'm going to talk to you about is that team of 3, what we were able to accomplish. And again, we published this in 2018. So I'll walk you through each one of these. Administratively, one of the things I learned early on when it was all by myself across 3 schools is there are cultural differences between the schools. Medical school, where I spent the 22 years running a research lab, is hierarchical. That means as a faculty member, I report to my department chair. I would never go talk to a research dean without permission. It's truly hierarchical, and every medical school in the United States operates this way. The other campus is flat, culturally flat, which means there's nobody in charge. So you have rotating chairs. If you have high-performing faculty, they might talk to the dean. They might talk to the vice president of research. They don't talk to me as the associate vice president. They might talk to the president, and our most high-performing faculty go straight to the board of trustees to get what they want. And so when I was faced with this realization, like 2 years or so into the job, I knew I needed a board. So I was hearing answers to the different solutions. How do we consolidate? How do we spend the money? Depending on which school I was talking to, I got different answers. So I created an advisory board of those people. I would bring the question to them and then get out of the way and let them fight with each other. And because these people all work with each other in other areas, it was cooperative, and they would answer collectively. And of course, I brought them questions where they disagreed intentionally, and they worked it out. So I could walk away with the notes saying, here's what you all said you agreed on, send them the notes. And that began a process of quarterly meetings and bringing them issues on regulations, federal regulations and university ones, what our peers are doing, how we're managing the evaluation process, where the investments should go. And that board was essential. So here were the core staff, myself and 2 others when they first started. And then these were the board members, one from each of the schools, a senior core director from each of the schools, and the research deans and the AVPRs. That was important. Financially, the institution was one of the things you'll hear a number of things, depending who you ask, but from senior administrators is when I go, well, we don't have money to spend on cores. And what I tell them is, I know, you're already spending it. You're just not spending it wisely. So at my own institution, I didn't ask for more money. We changed how we spent it. That took a little time, but here you see my office was $2.5 million a year starting in 2009. We spent it in a variety of ways that my board was very supportive of. The medical school was investing around approximately $2 million a year. So that's 4.5. And then I mentioned the video 6, it turned out to be closer to 7, you'll see on the data, a year. But that was departments and other centers all spending money on cores, their own money, right, on cores. You'll see a better breakdown shortly. And then I learned that the provost had money for construction. The provost had money for research, recruitment, and retention. And so I learned eventually how to insert myself into that process so that when we were recruiting and retaining a faculty member who wanted a new instrument, my job was to talk them into putting it into a core, which became increasingly easier as time went on and the cores got better and better. A loan program. This is something that 5 or 6 years in we created. When we looked at our portfolio, each campus had about $36 million worth of equipment, but some of it was aging and we needed how we're going to address this. And it wasn't going to be write a bunch of grants to replace them all. That wasn't feasible. So between faculty grant writing, instrument grant writing is part of the answer, but faculty recruitment and retention allowed us to get new instruments into the targeted areas, and this loan program. The loan program was funded by the provost and gave us the opportunity to give out equipment awards up to $500,000 for an instrument that's unlikely to merit writing a grant for, like a TEM, right? We've got an old TEM, it's 25 years old, and we need a new one. And so we did the underwriting. Those are my wife's insurance business. Underwriting is when you look at the risk and you evaluate whether it's worth investing in another TEM. And if that TEM is heavily used, of course. So the loan program, we give them the money, they buy it, and they pay us back by having an surcharge, 10% a year over the next 10 years, and they have to pay us back. And we have a whole series of documents they have to sign, the advisory committee has to sign, so that they know, because we can do this, we just take the money out of their account. We don't ask. They've already signed the document. It has worked beautifully, and around the country now, it's being modeled. Most of what I'm going to tell you today is not started with us. I go around and I see things that other schools are doing with cores, and I adopt them. This one came out of Northwestern. Oops, wrong direction. So here is the summary from 19. I stopped at 19 because in 20 I retired and that was COVID anyway, so it wasn't going to give us a real year. But this shows you a typical year. Total expenditures were 34 million, breakdown of internal and external, you can see. The average recovery rate by this year had been 86% on recharge. In other words, our costs to run the facilities now were on the back of the faculty's grants. That took 5 years to happen. This is now 10 years in. That takes time for that transition to happen. You cannot ask the faculty to pay for this when you switch to a fee-for-service model when grants don't have the money on there to pay for it. So that took a number of years for that transition. Back when I first started, their recovery was on average across the 45 cores, 52%, and we were up at 86 10 years later. Equipment support, total internal investment, as you see, 7.4. We talked about our own home-built software for managing cores and finances and the rest and published that. It's a 10-year retrospective of our software called NewCore. It's open access, it's free. I highly recommend iLabs and StrataCore. They are all fantastic. We just built our own. We have 6 universities using it. You don't get off the hook. Nothing is free. You got to hire your own people and manage it one way or the other. All right, this is the one figure when I go around the world, whether I'm in China or Singapore, Saudi Arabia, all throughout Europe, this is the one that catches the senior administrator's attention. And what you see here in blue is the amount of money being spent in core facilities. And the other one with the multicolors is the internal investment from different categories. So the blue shows you the first 5 years when I'm making a number of changes, some of which I've told you and some I'm going to show you more about. And then there's an inflection point. That's the cultural change. I didn't know it was going to happen. That was not my goal. It happened. It happened for a number of reasons, some of which I can document for you. Evaluation, raising our game, making sure that the staff, had the skills capable of being able to move the program, and then we completely changed. And I can tell you, I've seen there was a little bit of decline in 20 because of COVID. 21, it got back to where it was, and in 22, it went up past where we were. This is why, and again, next figure here, this is the investment here in purple in the cores. It's flat. During those 12 years that I was an administrator, we doubled the size of our research program from 450 million a year to 900 million. And the cores were flat. And so the money spent in core revenue in yellow, it went up because everything is going up, but not the institutional investment. That's the message for them. Invest in you all the right way, and you're good for growth. But if you waste the money, you're going to have to keep all that going up along with it. That's why it catches their attention. All right, so having said that, this stopped in 18, but here's just from last September, we're now up at 924. We started at 450. Now, having said that, you think, oh, Northwestern, our ranking didn't even change. Everybody doubled to a point. So we were ranked 28, 29, we're still 30 largest. What happened after 2009 is universities made a decision in the US whether they're going to grow their research or not. So we have roughly 160 research universities that have core facilities. Of that 160, only about 40 of them doubled. So there's now a spread. University of Chicago is still at 450. A lot of the groups I'm consulting with are down there and trying to weigh the balance, should they grow? We went with the group that doubled and our ranking didn't change. So let me give you another number. In 2009, the number of universities in the US that were spending $1 billion a year on research expenditures or awards, either way you want to measure it, 6. In 2022, 21, over $1 billion. Now that's a big, don't be impressed by the number. As an administrator, what I would tell you is it's 40 cents on the dollar of your own money to support research, that means they have to find $400 million a year to support that $1 billion budget. So when University of Chicago makes that decision not to grow up, they said, can't afford it. And I'm telling you is there's only about 40 universities in the United States said, we'll take the plunge. As an administrator, we're like, are you sure? Do you understand what it's going to cost us to do this? Anyway, that's why there's been this separation. There's that group who is investing in the vision of that growth and those that decided to hold the line. So it's not simply good to grow. You have to have a true mission of what it is you want. Professional development. This is a whole talk tomorrow. I'll go through each one of these things from the staff, the job families that we created, the publication guidelines, the intellectual property guidelines, the business and leadership training, and organizations that you need to participate in, like this one for career development. Other changes we made. Institutional evaluation, rigorous. We're scientists. When we developed our KPIs and SEIs, it was a difficult thing to do for everyone, right? Now you're under the microscope, but the quid pro quo for them was, you do this and we'll invest in you. You do it well and we'll really invest in you. We'll grow your operation. And so we all agreed. Notice the term in red, balanced scorecard. That's what I'm going to show you. This came from another administrator when I was first setting up the annual reports. And she said to me, Meg McDonald, read this paper. So I read the paper. It came out of Harvard Business School, and it was a study of an electronics company that had the same complaints we have. All the company cares about is making money. You know, they really don't care about us. And Harvard came in and did a study with them and created, with their help, something called the balanced scorecard. And what they mean by the balanced scorecard is if you're going to create a series of KPIs, metrics, you need to make sure that aligns with your values and that it's balanced across. So let me show you what our balanced scorecard looked like. And I'll just mention we have a university-wide survey. We gave out awards early on. We also do external review and some other types, but it's the balanced scorecard I want to walk you through. Here are the 8 topics that we focused in on. And this took a few years to get these right, maybe 3 or 4 years for me to get the right topics. Administration and leadership, the research and technical staff. Let me take a moment and tell you what this means. I give them what I need. I give them a list under every topic and how many points it's worth. So they know they're going to get a number at the end of this. And every year they know what I'm looking for. Their challenge is, can I do it? Can I create something the next year to get that box checked? And so the balanced scorecard begins with administrative is, do you have an advisory board? Do you have a faculty director? These are all things in the Office for Research I require if you're going to ask me for money. Do you have a finance person? This is the person who actually does the billing and the reconciliation of all your costs. Who is that person? It might be in a department or a research center, but tell me who it is so that I know you're from a business point of view, you have that covered. Research and technical staff. This is just for you. Have you published any papers this year? Developed any new techniques? Are you on a grant? Have you gone to scientific meetings? Have you participated in a workshop? You know, tell me what you're doing. Show me how you're improving your professional development for every one of your staff. Let me say it takes me 3 weeks to read them all. And but it's worth it. Then I know everybody. I know all their names. Everybody has different talents. Mine is I'm pretty good with names. So I learned all of these names, several hundred people over time by reading about them and then go visit them. So resource management, this is the one that has the finance piece. You only care about money. It's like, no, it's one of the 8. And in that one, it includes, did you get a new grant or new instrument? Did you develop a new service? How did your recharge do? What % recovery did you get? A number of things under resource management. Only one of it is recharge. So again, that was my way of saying the balanced scorecard. It's not all about generating money. It's not. And furthermore, look at the others. Customer survey, what's your base? Is it growing? What do they think of your core? Publications and grants by your customers, how are we doing? I used to just get a long list. Now we just ask for your 5 best publications in the past year. Education and outreach. That education is defined as curricular within Northwestern. So we have people in the cores either running a research lab or giving lectures in actual courses. And so that counts. Anything within outreach is a workshop, maybe an industry partner, K through 12, anything else that you're doing is part of that category. Communication, of course, is how you're getting the word out, your website and any other materials. And my favorite, and this didn't exist the first few years, I put it in, and Claire referred to it, self-assessment. The first year I put in self-assessment, there was a miscommunication. They bragged about their core. And I wrote back and said, that's not what I wanted. I want you to tell me what the problem is. And then I told them, and the more difficult the problem, the higher your score. I really want to know what keeps you up at night. I can't help you if you don't tell me. So don't tell me everything's good, or that means I'm going to ignore you. You're doing fine. Tell me what the problem is. And oh boy, I got the problems. And they got good scores. But you need to know. We all need to know. And then I can look across them. Are there shared problems, right? And there are. Here's the spider diagram that Claire referred to in a picture. That was part of the paper, the Harvard Business Review. So you take your different categories and you put it into a picture. And so every year for now 12 years, they have a picture how they're doing. And the further out the spider web is, the better they are. And if you have a score like that, that's almost as good as you can get. You can't, I'm too hard a scorer. So you can't do much better than that. They also get the bubble graph on the right. Now, the bubble graph on the right is, somebody brought this up earlier in the week, that's how you know how your peers are doing. So the size of the bubble is how many other cores scored at that level. So here you have the 8 categories, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here you scored either poor, good, numerically. I gave them the scoring. And if you look at your own score, when they get it, they get a bullet right in the middle of where they are, and they can see how they're doing compared to everyone else. It raised everyone's game. So much so we stopped giving awards and held big events for everybody, because what happened is the top 2/3 of the 45 were all getting scores that were so much alike we couldn't even differentiate anymore. Space. I had to get them out of the departments and into their own space, and that's where the provost came in. It was necessary for us to create our cores as PI driven. Our core directors, who are research faculty, are the PIs of the lab. They're responsible for the research safety, for the grant writing. It's their lab and their staff. It does not belong. And it was necessary in order to have that model to get them out of where they currently were and into their own space. And that took some investment, but the provost stepped forward and did it. And these are just 4 of them. Partnerships. I mentioned way back in the beginning, there's the potential for partnerships. Well, we have quite a number with cores. So at the Argonne National Laboratory, where they had the advanced photon source for crystallography, right? High energy electron beams. We have a partnership with DuPont and Dow. So they split the cost 3-way with us to run that beam line. We run it for them, but they get access to do their industry priority research on our beam line. We also manage the beam line for a bunch of other university partners that's more focused on biologicals, so it's proteins and nucleic acids. And then we have a Nikon Imaging Center, one of 3 in the US, that Nikon has 2 kinds, where you do instrument development. That's not us. The other type is where they put their instruments on consignment in our facility that have not been sold yet, right? These are new prototypes, and they let our user base sort of help them figure out what's needed. Is it working? Is it too complicated for them to use? And so we are one of those sites. The first director of this site and the first director of the Nikon Imaging Center was Leon Chu. Who here knows Leon? So Liang Chu then was recruited from Northwestern, and he's the scientific director of Janelia Farms Imaging Center at Howard Hughes Institute. The second person I recruited to replace him became the next one. He's now running all the cores at Boston College. So this is, I'm going to show you tomorrow, a career path right through this whole process. We have other partnerships. We have one with Siemens for our MRI facility. We have 7 MRIs, all for clinical, 1 animal, preclinical, and 6 human, just for research, not for clinical use, but for clinical research. And that's a partnership with Siemens. They're all core facilities, all fee for service. I developed what's called the Open Access Initiative. That's a partnership with the University of Chicago and UIC. We did a study. We hired Huron Consulting to come in, interview people, and answer the question, could we do a partnership with cores? And they interviewed the senior leadership at all 3 schools. They interviewed faculty directors. They interviewed the people in the cores themselves. And they came back and said, yes. So it was a 125-page report. But the bottom line was, you can do this. So I wrote the memorandum. All 3 provosts at the university signed it. And we share each other's facilities at the same cost that we charge each other. And in many cases, it's the subsidized cost. What that means is we have a lot of duplication, and then we don't use each other's unless there's a need for a backup. But for smaller cores, that's nice because there's an expert across town somewhere who you can go talk to while somebody's on maternity leave or has an illness. But more importantly, some of us have facilities like our MRI facility, they don't have. So they can use it. And cryo-EM, where's our cryo-EM speaker? There. So Joe Austin runs the cryo-EM at University of Chicago, and I've been trying to push our Northwestern people down there. Now, one of our faculty bought one. It's his own challenge. But cryo-EM was an example that we used institutionally for why we need that partnership, because the University of Chicago invested in 3 cryo-related instruments, and they're very expensive. So this open access initiative, which has been in place since 2014, has been part of how we deal with it. Now I'm going to pivot for a moment, and in the last few minutes, talk to you about what's happening nationally. So Paul mentioned in the introduction that I'm on a variety of boards now, but the task force for FASEB, I think, is the one where we've moved the needle the best. And I'm going to walk you through what that task force came up with, and then a publication that we wrote on what we were learning. Prior to 2021, I was on that task force. There was a previous one in 17 that started the ball rolling. And Claire, something for us to think about, and Nikki and I have been talking about it, the term they chose back then was research resource facility, or no, shared research resources, SRR. That meant not only core facilities, but national labs, which is a whole nother group. And these are shared facilities. I mentioned the Argon Advanced Photon Source as examples, but now the cryo-EM examples, right? We've got plenty of examples now of other shared resources. And that's the term that we inherited on the task force in 2021, and we kept it. So in 2017, that group was not core facility people, by the way. That was a bunch of FASEB faculty who were looking at shared and gave their recommendations and a survey of institutions of what they wanted. And what FASEB did different in 2021 is ask the core facility community to weigh in. So that's what I'm going to walk you through, what we said is needed. And that is regional and institutional and national strategies, clarity on the role of stakeholders and funding agencies in our investment. And in the US, this became important because in 2011, the NIH Institute in charge of cores closed. And it closed for a political reason. There was interest at that time of creating a new institute at the NIH, which became the Institute for Clinical and Translational Research. And Congress, tired of hearing about all these new institutes, said, okay, the deal is you want to create a new one, you have to close one. They closed the one that supported core facilities. Yes, and moved the instrument program into the office of the director, and everything else disappeared. So for a decade, we were without leadership at the NIH. I'll come back to that. So that's why role of stakeholders is important. Institutional responsibilities and strategies for the advancement of cores. Your institutions have a role here, and they have to be a partner. And then the strategies for the individual cores themselves. And you can read that report in more detail. But these are the 4 categories. And then followed by 4 recommendations. Address the harmonization across federal institutes. The NIH funds flow cytometry in a half a dozen different institutes. And maybe this happens in Mexico and in other parts of Latin America, but in the US, that's a problem because even the faculty don't know which one can I use. So as I began to consolidate and force them down into one, this created some concerns that the funding agency wouldn't fund us anymore for those other flow cytometries. We worked it out with the NIH, but that kind of harmonization still doesn't exist within them. We just worked it as a one-off, right? Talk to directors what we're trying to do, and they said fine. But there's no NIH-wide policy of how to deal with each of the 17 institutes and centers who all have their own ideas of how to fund core facilities. So we need that. We encourage them to foster, there's no training grants for core facility people. NCI created a little bitty one for a couple of people, but none of the other traditional T32 mechanisms we called for career advancement includes learning how to run a core facility. Equitable access. In the United States, I mentioned there are 160 roughly research universities that have cores of some nature. We have 6,000 colleges and universities in the United States. That's an awful lot of people who have no access and don't even know what a core facility is. All of our elite private schools, the liberal arts schools, they don't have core facilities. They have an instrument here, an instrument there. So we're pointing out we're leaving people behind. On top of leading up, people who are economically disadvantaged from this, these are people who are advantaged. They're at these universities and colleges already. They don't have access. Why? Because at places like us, you have to pay. It's not free. So how are we going to train them when nobody has the money to be able to build those programs? So we're asking the institute, the various agencies and institutions to think about it. And then, of course, rigor and reproducibility and environmental sustainability. All right, so this led to, and I think this is my close to last slide, a paper that the FASIB group then decided to publish a paper to get it out there. And we targeted this paper, because it's biomedical, to the NIH and said, here's that history. You dropped the ball a decade ago. Nevertheless, we've exploded. And now we need your help to address some of those concerns. We made 5 recommendations in this paper. Improve institutional stewardship. In other words, this is devious on our part. What we've learned is the institutions sometimes won't change until the federal funding agency says you have to. We've all learned that game. So what we're telling them there is do it. We got NCRR to do it before it closed on the S10 grants. That's the small instrumentation grants and the high-end instruments. Now they have to go into a core facility or you have to explain why not. We got them, FASIB got them, and ABRF to make that change. We're asking for more things like that. Go ahead and change your rules. The institutes will follow. Expand access, whatever that means. Allow funding to be able to allow more people to use them. Grow a more diverse DEI workforce. Increase and sustain. You can get new instrument, but what do you do about the older stuff, right? There's no program for this. We created our own loan program, but not everybody can do that. And then sustainability, prioritize sustainability decision-making. So we had members of the task force who were really focused on ecological sustainability. What happens to these instruments when they're no longer used? They end up in a landfill? Really? We don't want them in a landfill. What do we do about it? We need a program that says, We talked about one earlier this morning. At the very least, if it's still functioning good instrument, share it with somebody else. But at some point, it's no longer functional. What do we do with it? We need a program, right? To be conscious of how to handle that. Okay, that was the last slide. So stop, thank you, and then we'll take questions.
Do we have any question? Rocco.
Thank you for the talk. It looked great, the work you have done to optimize the efficiency of facility and all the performance indicator and the strategy to also talk to the institution. Now, would you define your approach top down or bottom up? In other words, somebody recruited you and put you in place to do this work, or do you think there was also personal initiative trying to understand how the facility works and put together all this knowledge? And do you think it's possible in every institution, in every country, or there might be differences?
Yes, great question. How did this initiative begin? And it began with a new vice president for research who was hired from within the university. And when he was an associate dean in the engineering school, Jay Walsh, you saw him on the video. He's the first person interviewed. Became a big supporter of CORS because he tells the story over and again. The faculty came to him because they knew him. Oh, you're going to be the new vice president? Fix our facilities. That's what they told him. So he called us all together who were overseeing facilities. At that time, I was running a 2-photon microscopy facility. 2-photon, I'm a live cell person. Our 2-photon systems, and we ended up building 20 of them, do electrophysiology, molecular uncaging while you're doing 2-photon imaging. So these are physiological systems, complex. I had big grants to do all this. And so I was invited, one of about 40 core directors, faculty directors of CORS. And he said, I'm going to hire somebody to be in charge of all the cores. And so this Jay and I go way back. We traveled together. We built things together, instruments together. He's an instrument builder too, like me. And I said, bad idea. And I texted him. And he said, are you volunteering? And I said, we'll talk. And so I negotiated a half-time for the first 3 years that I would see if I liked it, because this is what you do if you want to become an associate dean or something. It's a half-time job for 3 years. It's traditional academic approach. I did it, I loved it, and I did it. So it came top down is the answer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Our system is also blended, meaning I don't tell them how to do the science, right? The core directors do not report to me. I support them. They have to give me an annual report if they want me to invest in them every year. But I don't tell them how to run it. They have to have a faculty advisory committee, which is primarily their big users, their main users. They have to have a faculty director with a few exceptions. A few exceptions where the core leader is so good, he's better than any faculty member. Like Andy Ott, who you saw, who's the chemist in charge of IMCIRC, who's now the director of all the cores. He didn't have a faculty director. He came from Intel, and he was a manager at Intel, and he knew everything he needed to know how to run this facility. So there are some exceptions, but the point is it's blended, where we top down are doing the evaluation, we're doing the investment, we're running interference both institutionally and nationally, creating programs with partner institutions. That's our job. Their job is to do the science, and we don't challenge them on any level when it comes to the science. We do program review. We bring in outside experts. And at a private school like Northwestern, we've been doing it since 1986. My department, I'll be retiring after 36 years, we've been reviewed 4 times during that period. Everybody gets reviewed. So I told the cores, you're no exception. And smart, the first few years, I also reviewed the top cores. just to show everybody gets reviewed. So they don't feel like you've been picked out because you're struggling. I did pick out one struggling, but not only them. And struggling means we had to change. The quid pro quo is some people lost their jobs. Some people I moved because imagine you're running a core facility and you don't really like all this finance stuff. You just want to do science. So we created a position for that director, technical director, and brought in an operations director who is also a PhD, but who's really is the one in charge. All of that is to keep the talent. The only people we lost are those who really couldn't keep up. And that has to happen. That's the quid pro quo. If we're going to all succeed, we do it together. And we cannot have the weakest link. It won't work. The faculty are watching. Yeah, Nikki?
So what's so great about what you implemented there is that you also let the data start to dictate where things went. And the data was there to show to everybody else, well, you know, you aren't performing, because they could see where their blob was on the blob chart, right? Yep. And as you said, it ultimately made everybody step their game up to the point where everybody was excelling. So really, it was the tide that raised all boats, in fact. Presumably, too, then you were actually able to invest in the cause, providing the services or the resources that they were struggling with to be successful, because they were identifying those in their self-evals or self-assessments.
So you're absolutely right. So I brought to share with you the annual report from 2019. We did it every year. And they don't get this, they get theirs, but my advisory board gets to see how everyone. So let me show you what it looks like. So the cores, the first thing they see is the scoring. They get this every year. Here's how I'm scoring you. This is what we're looking for. And my board's already approved all this. So all of this, and all of this are the categories. Answer the question, get the score. How'd you score? This is by 2019, we're just drawing the line down there. Pink means off the charts, good. This is one way to evaluate. What they get, these are all struggling down here. They struggle every year. They're small, they're boutique, we need them, but they're barely, they don't have enough people really to make it. Eduardo.
Do you see some kind of tendency for bad scores?
Is there a consequence of bad score?
No, consequence that they tendency, a trend like they have.
Let's go to the individual cores. Each one gets a page, which is the response to their categories, strengths, weaknesses, and a score for each category. And then their spider diagram, how they did. And then a 5-year running average on their finances across the different categories, and a graph that shows how they're doing on the financial side. Every core, every page is another core across all these different facilities. So transparency. They know what the scores are. They know what we're looking for. The board is approved. Everybody knows what we need to do together. And now, did you do it? And if your program review comes in and you're struggling, program review is there to help you improve, right? The point of program review is not to get rid of you. The point of program review is everybody gets reviewed at my school. My office for the cores got reviewed. And I will blush here to tell you, we brought in Penn, WashU, and Emory, and they said they'd never seen cores this good. Furthermore, I didn't show you a slide, but I'll tell you, we have the NCI has a core program that they've had for years, and they have a group of faculty who go around the country and evaluate all of their programs, their cores. This is a P30 mechanism, and this is a CC Cancer Center IG institutional grant for cores. And just to give you an idea, in 2013, we had 8 cores that were in the Cancer Center. They evaluated the 8, and the categories are sort of average, good, very good, excellent. And then one category called exceptional. And in 2013, we had 6 outstanding, and 1 exceptional. And who was that? Liang Chu. Just to give you an idea, what you have to do to be exceptional. 5 years later, 14 cores, 12 exceptional. So I used that. We're doing good. Apparently, the people who evaluate cores, comparing ourselves to other institutions. So we do our own internal review. We let the externals come in and tell us as well. And furthermore, some of our people have moved on and been recruited to become directors of all the cores at universities. I'll tell you a little bit more about them tomorrow. So metrics, right? Yes, they are driving evaluation and decision making.
Thank you, Philip. I was wondering, since the lower scores are used to find ways to improve these facilities, what happens with the ones that are exceptional? Do you have some kind of reward in order to, because many of you here have congratulated me because the way that my facility far away in the south is working very well. And the main reason that I'm here is because I want to learn for myself, but also for other core facilities in my institution. But the sad thing is that I am the exceptional thing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't receive anything from it besides of good work, keep going. You see? So what's your model in that way?
So the first thing that I recommend to schools is they have to have somebody who's in charge of overseeing the cores, and then they can develop metrics, right? And then you have some information in which to be able to know, are you truly doing an exceptional job? In the absence of that, you can find other ways to know that you're doing a good job. Somebody mentioned winning an award, you know, from your society. But by and large, having somebody at an administrative level whose job it is to oversee the cores and evaluate them, that's a good way to do it. Now, the more specific answer to the question, did we reward them? The first 8 years, yes. So we would pick the top 3 or 4 based on score, looking for separation. They became the outstanding cores. They got, that group, a plaque, which is on their wall, $1,000 to go out and have a party or do whatever they wanted as a group, right? A write-up in the Office for Research newsletter, which comes out every quarter. And we took them out to dinner, lunch during working hours. First 8 years. When we moved to what I just showed you and they all got that, we just held a group celebration. And they all still get a plaque, but now it says that they are, it's a different word now. And let's see, what did we call them? The Service Excellence Awards. So this group, so this year by 19, I think this was the second year. This is it. This explains what the criteria, and here are all the cores that got it. So they are all invited to that celebration luncheon. We don't give them $1,000 anymore. They get a plaque in that, but all of that is doing what you're saying, incentivizing, giving them some sort of reward. Yes. Yes. Do we need to stop? Am I going over here? Who's in charge? Are we out of time yet?
Yes.
Okay.
We are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the talk.